Hello everyone, this is Margarita with CityGal Papeterie. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. This is part 2 of my scrap series where I am using some card templates or card sketches to create several cards using pieces of scrap paper. And this sketch is going to be using a weaving technique. So I have here 4 strips laid out horizontally, and I am weaving some other strips along those 4 horizontal strips to create this nice pattern. I am going to try and speed through this just a little bit. You can see there on the right hand side of the screen, I have already created one of these cards, but I just didn't record the process for the weaving part. So I am filming that now so I can share it with you all. It's something that is not too complex. You know, you can definitely recreate this using strips of paper. If you don't have strips of paper, you can always make strips of paper. You could use different size strips of paper for this. It doesn't have to be any particular size. This is another great technique to use the branding strips at the top of your paper pads. But as I just mentioned, if you didn't have strips but you wanted to create something like this, you could create your own. You could make your own strips. You could also do this with washi tape. You would obviously have to put your washi onto paper first, onto cardstock, and then cut it out. And then you can weave those strips just the way that I'm doing with this. I keep these cards pretty simple as well, and I will be showing some variations towards the end of this video. Other cards that I created using the same idea. Once my little weaving patch is ready, or it's as big as I want it to be, I'm gonna flip it over and I'm gonna just adhere all the pieces together with Scotch tape. And that's so that they're not coming apart as I'm working with my little panel. So I'm going to go along my sides and I'm going to trim off all of the longer strips of paper so that I have a nice even rectangle. The best way for me to do this is to use my farthest strips on the left and right hand side of my panel that I weaved together, and I just use that as a guide to cut the rest off, or whatever is left over. And I'm definitely not keeping the scraps after cutting these pieces out. I am definitely throwing those away, I promise. So now that this is completely taped on the back, I'm gonna grab some double-sided tape, and I'm just gonna tape down the little flaps that are not going to be adhered with the tape on the back, because obviously they're not there's no access to them from the back. So this way they're still going to stay in place as I'm working with the panel, or once I completely put it on the card, nothing's going to be lifting up from its place. The size for this really depends on the types of strips that you have, the size of the strips, and how many strips you use. So it's hard to kind of give any indication of like specifically how many strips you're going to need, because it really depends on the size of your paper strips, and it depends on how big or how much you want it to cover your card front. Now that all of those little flaps are taped down, I'm going to add some double-sided tape on the back, and I'm going to place that down on my card base. I'm just trying to make sure that it's nice and straight and around the same area as my previous card. Now that that's completely adhered, I am going to stamp my sentiment. I open up my card so I can make my paper as flat as I possibly can have it. Sometimes when my card is folded, the left hand side of the card tends to be a little bit higher than the right. And so this way I make sure that I get a nice even impression. And this is what we have so far. I am going to also add a little piece of twine tied in a bow at the bottom, just like the previous card. So here's the template once again. And these are the cards that I just created. The first cards with just the original idea, and then I'm gonna show you a few variations to this card design. Here's one variation. I only used some gold accented paper, and then I put my sentiment on the right hand side with my little weaved pattern on the left hand side. You could also add a die cut to the top of that. For this one, I have my weaved panel in the center, and then I put some propped up panels at the top and bottom with a nice zigzag edge, and then just a simple sentiment stamped at the bottom. Same sentiment here, and then same idea. The weaved patch is in the center. I added a background sheet to the one on the left, and then I have the cardstock that's elevated at the top and bottom. For this one, I used an edge die to create the scalloped paper. For the top and bottom, I added a polka dot background, and then my weaved patch is in the center with a die cut sentiment. So same idea, but totally different look for each card. For my next one, I took my weaved patch and I ran it through my die cutting machine with a heart die. These are nesting dies, so I cut another die or another heart shape to put right behind it, and then I elevated my little patched piece so that it has some dimension. Same thing here. I used a cloud die or cloud dies for this one with a nice pattern paper for my background. So again, similar idea, totally different cards. And I hope you enjoyed this. I know these are pretty short. They're just to give you guys some ideas of ways you can use your scrap paper. And I hope to see you guys in part 3. Bye.